Hundreds of thousands of EVs are rotting away in China. Across China, fields littered with abandoned electric vehicles paint a grim picture of an industry in flux. So how did we end up with hundreds of thousands of EVs left to decay? Well, there are 4 reasons to blame. Number 1. Car-sharing companies are going out of business. Car-sharing companies were once the darlings of the EV world. Backed by massive government subsidies, they eagerly snapped up fleets of electric cars. The idea was simple: get more people used to driving EVs, and eventually they'd make the switch from gas guzzlers to electric. On paper, it sounded like a win-win. The government got to show off its green credentials, the car-sharing companies looked innovative, and everyone was happy. But like all good things that are too good to be true, it just didn't last. The problem was that these car-sharing companies were living on borrowed time and borrowed money. The moment the Chinese government decided to pull the plug on the subsidies, the whole house of cards came crashing down. Without the financial crutch, these companies simply could not survive. They went out of business almost overnight, leaving behind a sea of abandoned EVs. Now these once celebrated electric cars are nothing more than junkyard fodder. You can find them lined up in what can only be described as EV graveyards, vast fields filled with rows upon rows of decaying cars. It's a grim sight and a stark reminder that the transition to electric vehicles isn't as smooth as the glossy ads make it out to be. This fiasco with car-sharing companies in China shows that the electric vehicle industry is built on shaky ground. Without continuous government handouts, it cannot stand on its own. This reliance on subsidies is a massive red flag. If the industry were truly viable, it wouldn't need such heavy financial support to keep it afloat. But that is just one of many reasons. Number 2. Cheaper to buy new EVs than repair old ones. One of the biggest selling points for EVs is supposed to be their simplicity and lower maintenance costs. We're often told that fewer moving parts means fewer things that can go wrong. However, the reality is a lot more complicated. When something does go wrong with an EV, the repairs can be shockingly expensive and complex. This is especially true in China, where the rapid rise and fall of countless EV startups have left a trail of orphaned vehicles with no technical support or spare parts to keep them running. Imagine owning an EV and having it break down, only to find that the parts you need aren't available because the manufacturer went out of business. Even if you can find the parts, finding a technician who knows how to fix your particular model can be another headache. The specialized training required for EV repairs isn't as widespread as it is for traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. This lack of support infrastructure means that repair shops can charge a premium, turning even minor fixes into costly endeavors. Given these challenges, many EV owners are faced with a harsh reality. It's often cheaper and easier just to buy a new car than to repair the old one. This is especially true if the vehicle has been in an accident. Even a minor collision can damage critical components like the battery housing, and the cost of fixing these parts can be astronomical. Instead of dealing with the expense and hassle of repairs, owners are opting to write off their old EVs and buy new ones. This disposable approach to electric vehicles is contributing to the growing number of abandoned EVs in China. Fields full of rusting, forgotten cars stand as a testament to the unsustainable nature of the current EV market. These graveyards of electric vehicles are not only a financial waste, but also an environmental disaster just waiting to happen. The batteries in these abandoned cars are full of toxic chemicals that pose serious environmental risks if not properly disposed of. Number 3. Organized scheme. In the rush to dominate the EV market, the Chinese government rolled out generous subsidies to any startup willing to jump into the electric vehicle game. The idea was simple: flood the market with EVs to speed up the transition from fossil fuels. This well-intentioned plan, however, opened the floodgates for a host of EV startups that were more interested in grabbing government money than building quality vehicles. These startups knew that meeting sales quotas was key to keeping these subsidies rolling in. So what did they do? They turned to car-sharing companies as their primary customers. These companies, also benefiting from these subsidies, became dumping grounds for thousands of EVs. It was a win-win on paper. Startups got their sales numbers and car-sharing companies expanded their fleets without breaking the bank. This scheme was built on shaky ground. The EVs produced during this gold rush were often subpar. car, with limited range and reliability issues. Once the initial excitement faded and the government began to cut back on subsidies, the true fragility of these businesses was exposed. Without financial support, both the EV startups and the car-sharing companies started to collapse like a house of cards. What we're left with now are the so-called EV graveyards, vast expanses filled with abandoned electric cars. These vehicles, once symbols of a bright electric future, are now decaying relics of a failed scheme. The startups that produced them have gone out of business, leaving no support for maintenance or repairs, and as a result, these EVs are left to rust and rot, contributing to an environmental disaster rather than solving one. The organized scheme to inflate EV sales through government subsidies and car-sharing companies shows the dark side of rapid, unplanned growth. Instead of creating a robust and sustainable EV market, it has led to financial waste and environmental harm. The fields of abandoned EVs are a stark reminder that quick fixes and shortcuts often lead to more significant problems down the road. Number 4. Market oversaturation. In the quest to dominate the global EV market, China has ramped up production to staggering levels. The government's push to promote EV adoption, combined with subsidies and incentives, has spurred a frenzy of manufacturing activity. And as a result, these Chinese automakers are churning out millions of EVs annually, far exceeding domestic demand. The issue is compounded by limited expansion into Western markets. Despite China being the world's largest EV producer, the majority of these vehicles are sold within its borders. Attempts to penetrate Western markets have been met with significant challenges, including regulatory hurdles, quality concerns, and political tensions. For instance, policies like the imposition of tariffs by Western governments, such as the Biden administration's actions, have further restricted Chinese EVs' access to international markets. As a consequence of these factors, dealerships and storage lots across China are overflowing with unsold EVs. These new, often state-of-the-art vehicles are left languishing in parking lots, resembling ghost towns of automotive innovation. The lack of demand means that these EVs are essentially stranded, awaiting buyers who may never materialize. Moreover, the economic implications are profound. Automakers, especially smaller EV startups, face financial strain as inventory piles up. The inability to sell these vehicles not only ties up capital, but also undermines profitability and long-term sustainability. It's a vicious cycle where overproduction leads to financial losses, exacerbating the already precarious nature of the EV market. The sight of rotting EVs in China serves as a stark reminder of the pitfalls of rapid electrification efforts. It prompts reflection on the need for sustainable solutions and responsible growth in the quest for a greener automotive future.